The program comes largely from this book, which is called Smart Networking. I'm going to probably order a bunch more of these and give them out as door prizes, but I think it's one of the best networking books I've ever read by a lady named Liz Lynch. And the How to Perfect the Art of the Ask is one chapter in this excellent book. And so we talk to you all the time about networking. You need to gather around you a huge network of people. I tell you all the time, make a list of the top 10 companies you want to work for, and then the second tier companies, and the third tier, and the fourth tier, and try to connect with recruiters from all of those companies so that when they do a search on LinkedIn, your name will come on the top of the list. We've talked to you about how do you network in a big networking meeting. If you go to a network after work or Austin Tech happy hour, you're in a bar, there's lots of people. How do you strike up a conversation? We've talked about all of those things. What do you say? How do you connect? And so I think that we're all a little bit better about doing that piece than we used to be. And some of you are well connected with people on LinkedIn. But then once you have created this network, so you have a lot of people that perhaps know who you are and what you do, when is it appropriate to actually ask them to help you? How do you do that? When do you do that? What do you say to make that happen? How do you avoid turning them off completely? So that's what this presentation is all about. How to perfect the art of the ask. How do you ask them for assistance? Building your network is very important, and we tell you that that is a huge piece of the job search process. But knowing how to use your network is even more important. Knowing how to enlist their assistance, how to make that happen. When you ask for help, how do you avoid having your request be too soon in the relationship? We always talk about how when you go to a meeting and you meet somebody new, we have a tendency to say, "How do you do? Can you help me?" It's too soon. It's too soon. Nobody is comfortable with "How do you do? Can you help me?" And if you've just met somebody, they don't really know you, and you come on too strong and you ask for their help, it is a total turn off. They will run from you. Listen, good luck with that job search. Really, I gotta go. Nobody wants to be around somebody who seems too desperate and too anxious for assistance. What if you ask them for too much? Now, asking, can you introduce me to your boss? I don't really feel I know you well enough to introduce you to my boss. Or introduce me to the CEO of your company. I don't even know the CEO of my company myself. I can't, it's too much. You're asking for something that I can't deliver. So that's an issue. And maybe too late. You've met somebody, you've followed up, you've created a bit of a relationship, and then you let that network, that relationship die on the vine, and by the time you get around for asking them for help, they don't remember you anymore. You're too late. You're too late. You've got to start from scratch. So all of these things, there's a fine line. There's a window of opportunity within which you might have a chance to get some assistance if you don't blow it. But it's a little bit tricky. One of the things you should do is to put yourself in their shoes. When you ask them for help, they're thinking, how much time is this going to take? If you want, I don't know, you want them to go to lunch. Maybe there are people that work through lunch. They don't even take a lunch. They don't have time for lunch. If you want them to give you an informational interview, could you meet with me for 30 minutes? And some people will say, I don't have time for 30 minutes to just, answer questions. I don't have time. How much time is this going to take when you ask them for something? These are busy, busy people. And so how much time is it going to take? Are they able to do it? Are they able to do it? We had another board member. I've talked to you about him in class. This guy is named David. He used to work for Facebook, making a ton of money, and then found himself looking for a job for, I don't know, it was like 8 months or something like that. Ended up taking a survival job, working, selling inside sales of security systems from 3 to 11. So he still had time during the day to look for a job. And he decided that he was going to, instead of looking for jobs or following up on jobs that were posted, he decided instead that he was going to make a list of the companies where he wanted to work and see if he could connect with the senior level people, executive level people within all of those companies. So one of the companies that was on his list was Accenture. He looked on LinkedIn. He had one person that he was connected to who worked for Accenture, but this guy worked in a rather low-level position. And so he reached out to him, and he said, let's go have lunch. So they had lunch, and during lunch he said, I'm trying to meet this person. It was a senior VP of Accenture. And he said, can you get me to that person? And the guy said, no, I don't even know him. I'm way down here. Was he able to do that? No, he was not able to do that. And so, as it turns out, so then David said, okay, can you get me a little bit closer to that person? Like, no, I don't even know anybody that's up by him. I mean, I could introduce you to my boss, but I don't know anybody at that level. And so he said, well, that's great. Introduce me to your boss. So the guy introduced him to his boss. David met with that guy. They kind of hit it off. They had some stuff in common. He was creating a relationship with that person. And he said, I'm trying to get to this guy. Can you get me to that guy? And he said, no, an executive? No, I don't know any of those people. And he said, can you get me a little bit closer? And he worked his way up the food chain for a long time until he finally got to the senior VP, met with him. The guy was very impressed with David's background, and he hired him on a job that was not yet posted. So when you ask somebody to help you, make sure that it's something that they can do, or be very clear about what they could do that would be able to help you. Are you able to do it? And another thing that the person that you're asking for help, they have to consider, if I do this thing, if I grant your request, is it going to help me? Is it going to hurt me? Or will it have no impact on me? For example, if, let's just say that somebody's kind of obnoxious, and that person asks you, put yourself in their shoes. Let's say that they ask you, will you introduce me to this person? And you don't really want to do that, because it's going to reflect badly on you if you connect that obnoxious person to the person that they're trying to get to. So is it going to help me if I accede to their request? Is it going to hurt me if I do that? Or will it have no impact on me? Sometimes you try to do a favor for somebody and it backfires, and you're the one that ends up looking really bad. So put yourself in the shoes of the employer. In the book, this guy talks about a time when he had a consulting company, and somebody connected him to a woman who also had a consulting company, different services. And at that time, the man was subcontracting. He was working for another consultant company at a huge firm. So this is a little convoluted. And he met with this woman. They thought maybe there'd be some synergy. They could help each other. And she said, can you introduce me, can you connect me, introduce me to the CEO of the big company? And he said, sure, I think I can do that. And as it turns out, she was asking him for something that, as it turns out, he couldn't do. When he tried to connect her, to introduce her to the CEO, it went badly. He was not interested in meeting her. It also got the contractor that he worked for in a little bit of hot water. And so it was a huge foobar all the way around. The CEO was a little bit put out over this. The contractor he worked for was embarrassed and so forth. This guy couldn't deliver on what he'd promised, and then she was sort of disenchanted with him at that point because he couldn't help her. So it was just a bad thing all the way around. It hurt lots of people. He was not able to do it, and so anyway, you have to keep all these things in mind when you're going to be asking somebody for help. One unbreakable rule. The more time-consuming your request, the stronger the relationship is that you should have before you ask the favor. So if you're going to ask somebody to put themselves out for you, you better be sure that you have a very strong relationship. This is a good friend. Because you're asking them to go to bat for you, or you're asking them to spend some time on your behalf. And it's not going to work if it's a superficial relationship. It needs to be somebody you've worked with over the long haul, whatever. So just keep remembering that. The relationship. You have to nurture the relationship, get the relationship strong. Maybe you've met somebody and you're going to help them out. They've got, like, let's say that, Otto's not even there anymore, but let's just say that Otto's always looking for volunteers to work on the oatmeal festival. So let's say that you really want to connect with Otto because he's got some pull somewhere. And so you volunteer for the oatmeal festival. You do something for him. You ingratiate yourself to him. You get him on your side. And then, because you've helped him out in a tight, then the relationship is much stronger, and you can feel comfortable asking him if he'd be willing to go to bat for you with whatever he can do for you. So it's a quid pro quo. I'll help you out, and then later when that relationship is strong, you feel more comfortable about asking them for help. Subtlety and tact. It could be that what you really want is this big favor, but it's never a good idea to come out and say, will you recommend me? Will you hire me in this job? Instead, start in a much smaller request. Ask for information, ask for advice. Let's say that you know somebody who is the hiring manager and you want that job. It puts them in a very difficult position if you reach out to them and say, I heard that you're hiring somebody, you're looking for somebody, and you know me, I can do that job. Will you hire me, or will you put in a good word for me? And it could be that they don't really feel that you would be a good fit. It could be that it's too big a request. But if you say, look, I've been seeing some jobs every so often coming up at your company that I might be interested in. Would you be able to meet with me briefly and just tell me a little bit about the culture? Could you give me some advice? Could you provide a little bit of information? So what do you think the culture is of that particular department? What is the process? What's the hiring process? How many interviews do they have? Do they hire on a temp basis? Is it contract to perm, or do they hire straight out? Or where are they? I know they had a posting for something. Where are they in that process? Do you know if they've offered anybody the position yet? So make your questions easy. Don't put them on the spot to make them commit to you, recommend you. You might ask if they have a policy where somebody gets a referral bonus if they recommend somebody. It might be good to just know if that's a policy, and if you find out it is, the person you're talking to has figured out you want that job, and if they feel that you're qualified, they might say, look, I forgot all about you, and that you had that kind of background. How about I put you in for this position? let me introduce you to the boss. Let them come up with what you really want. But don't be so overt and so pushy and so aggressive that you put them in a difficult position. The contractor who got everybody mad at him because he did that wrong, he said there are two things that could have been different that could have made that thing go down differently. One is that the woman, instead of saying, "Will you introduce me to the CEO?" she might have said something like, "Look, I would love to meet the CEO if it seems if you're comfortable with it, or if you get to a position where you feel that would be okay. I'd love to meet him." And so you're not asking him, "Will you do this for me?" You're just expressing the desire and saying, if it ever becomes convenient, if you're ever in a position where this is something that you feel comfortable about, I sure would like to meet him. And so then maybe what they do instead of introducing, maybe they have a little social gathering and they invite everybody to come to it, and you meet him in that way. It's a lower key kind of deal. And he said that what he could have done as well is he could have said, I don't feel as though I know him well enough. If I get to where I do feel comfortable about it, then I'll keep that in mind, that you'd like to meet him. But at this point, I'm pretty new to the job myself, and I think it'd be a little bit presumptuous for me to do that. So, excuse me. So at any rate, asking for small things, asking for advice and information is almost always better than asking for an actual action on your behalf. And work up the hierarchy if that's easier. Don't be a freeloader. If the favor that you want is a service that somebody does for a living, don't ask for free legal advice. Don't ask for free career advice if somebody does that for a living. Lots of you have been in a position like that where somebody is trying to get you to help them. If somebody's like a grant writer, don't milk them for 2 hours on how should we write this grant when they would actually do that for a living. So at any rate, don't be a freeloader. Asking a few short questions, advice and information, but at any rate, don't take advantage of them in that way. And I doubt that any of you would, but the temptation is there. Gratitude. When somebody has met with you, when somebody has recommended you, when somebody has connected you with somebody, always be grateful. And just if you want to send them a thank you note, if you want to send them a thank you email. In some cases, if somebody recommends you and you end up getting a job as a result, you might even send them a little bit of a gift. But let them know that you appreciate any efforts that they have done on your behalf. And keep them up to date on what it is that happens to you. We hear this all the time where somebody will say, "Yeah, I met with one of your clients. They called me up for an informational interview. I met with them for 30 minutes, gave them a lot of information. Never heard from them again. I don't know if they got hired or they didn't get hired." They want to know. Now they've invested some time in you. They're interested in you, and they want to know. And when you get a job, let them know that. "Listen, I wanted to let you know I finally got hired. I'm now working for the so-and-so, and it all started with you because you gave me the advice on connecting with these 3 people, which I did, and it all paid off. And I'm now working, and I want you to know how very much I appreciate that." So keep them up to date with what's going on in your job search. And don't let those connections die on the vine. Once you get connected to somebody, that is just the seed has been planted. But in order to create a relationship, you have to stay after it, and it's very time consuming to keep all of these people up to date with what you're doing. How many of you know a guy named Jeff Johannigman? 1, 2, only 2. I'm amazed. He is. He's been a speaker at Launchpad, I don't know, half a dozen times maybe. He is a career coach, he's a trainer, he's an instructional designer, but he also worked in the gaming industry. And he had a group of people. We were all kind of part of his job search network. So periodically, twice a year or so, he would send a huge group email to all of us, and he would say, "Let me update you on what I'm doing now in my job search, and I appreciate the job leads that you've sent me. I've gotten an interview at these 7 places. 3 of them said I was overqualified, and 4 of them said I was underqualified. But I'm still working on that, and I want to send a special thank you to these people that reached out and did whatever." But he would keep us all up to date with what was going on in his job search. And your network is important, and you need to keep them up to date. And then give back. If somebody helps you out, you help them. Give them a business referral. Recommend them to somebody else. Write a recommendation on LinkedIn for those people. Maybe make a donation. We had a speaker a few weeks ago, Tom Singer, who said that he would always speak at Launchpad anytime we wanted him to. He is a professional speaker now. That's his new career, and he supports his family with his speaking engagements. And yet we didn't pay him anything. I usually, for our speakers, I buy their books, or I give them a gift card or something like that. We just gave him a little gift, but we didn't pay him anything. But he did mention that because of the birth defect of his daughter, that he had set up a foundation at Dell Children's Hospital in her name. And so we're making Launchpad is making a donation, and I'm making a donation. So we're helping him out because he helped us out. And he said he would always speak at Launchpad anytime we wanted him to, and he would always do it for free, because early in his speaking career, we gave him a chance to speak to a big group. And so he was very, very generous. And so we pay back. Everybody needs to pay back. If you don't have any money to pay back, you have your most valuable substance, your time. Your time. Help them out with a project. Help them out with volunteering. But that you're giving back, and with everything that you give back, you build that relationship. And once you've established the relationship, and they know they can count on you to help them, then that means that you can count on them to help you. And then you feel comfortable asking them, would you feel okay about setting up could we all go to lunch together? Could we all go for coffee after work? And involve yourself with these people. So it's all about helping each other. And then you can feel comfortable with the ask. So it's all about networking, helping each other, sharing information, giving back. Once you go to work, it's very possible that other people from Launchpad are going to want to go to work for that same company. Help them out. Help them out. Informational interviews are huge. Lots of you have come back into Launchpad multiple times, and you remember how much this sucks. If there's anything you can do. In fact, we now have a new board position, which is called an ambassador, I think. Something like that. And Jim Adcock, lots of you know him. He's our vice president of our board. He is in charge of our ambassador program. And so when Launchpad people go to work, if we hear about it, he's going to contact you, and he's not going to ask you to give us money. I hope. Oh God, I hope he's not going to ask you to give us money. But what I think he's going to ask you to do is to, when the company that you go to work for, when they have openings, post them to our LinkedIn group, share those job leads, and make yourself available for information about the company and what it's like to work there. If your company has a program where they match charitable donations, they have a giving program, let us know. Give us the paperwork to fill out, so that if anybody gives money to us, then the company would match that. We're in the midst of a huge fundraising campaign because we're trying to pay Shannon and the other Leap to Success people a salary. She cannot put out 40 hours a week on that program with no money. forever. So at any rate, so we don't want to necessarily get money from you folks because you don't have any money, but we want you to get money from your companies when you go to work. And they could sponsor us, and that money all goes into Leap to Success. So giving back, when somebody helps in whatever way you can. Any questions about that? Comments? Concerns? Let me see if I have any more stories. Oh yeah, I have another story.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you get over the I am need when you're asking somebody for help?
Well, you ask for something very little and say, listen, I'd like to know a little bit more about your company. I wonder if you'd have time to just answer a couple questions about the, what it's like to work here, the culture or whatever. If you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and what you really want to know is, can I negotiate for more money? That's a snoopy question, and you don't want to start with that because that's a big fat question. But if you start with, listen, I'm trying to, thank you for connecting with me on LinkedIn. I've been applying for some jobs with a company that you used to work with, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk to me a little bit about the culture. Here's my LinkedIn address or my personal address or whatever. But I have a few questions. Would you mind connecting with me or whatever, however you want to do it. So you start with just a few little questions about the culture. Do you know the person who's in charge in that department? What's that person like? And then, what did you like best about the company? I was looking them up on Glassdoor. I couldn't find anything. And so I wondered what you like best about the company and what you like least. I noticed you were there for a long time, and you got some promotions. That was great. It's a little bit dicey to ask people about a company that they currently work for. I think that puts them in an awkward position. But if you can connect with somebody on LinkedIn who used to work in that company or in that department, and connect with them, I think that makes the whole thing easier. And then if everything's going well, and they meet you for coffee or whatever, and you feel comfortable, then you can say, what about salary? Is it possible to negotiate more money than is initially offered? Or do you know what they pay for this kind of position? And so then you can get a little bit snoopier. I don't know what it was. It's gone. But start with something little. Start with something little. John?
Going back to the networking sections we had here and how the theory of networking, if you ask people like to talk about themselves, even introverts sometimes. You can get them talking about their job. You can even sometimes ask about the company they work at now. And getting to talk about their job means you understand who they know and what they do there, so you're not asking them things that they don't know. So I had some success doing it that way, like you would do at a networking event. But I want to know about your job, and that can lead into the culture. But you get a feeling for, are they in management? Do they know about the hiring process? If they're not in management, they're not going to know about the hiring process. They're not going to know, if they're not a VP, there's certain things they're not going to know. And you're going to put that at a disadvantage if you ask them about things that would be at a different level for them.
Well, I think that may be true, although sometimes, when you look on Glassdoor and they say, what's the interview process like? And they'll say they give you 3 interviews, and one of them is a stress interview, and they like to ask logic questions, or they like to ask silly, unanswerable questions, like how many gas stations are there in the United States, and so they like to ask you puzzle questions or whatever. We had a person one time who was being interviewed by a state agency, and we had a launchpad person that was leaving that job, got promoted, and we had another launchpad person who was interviewing for that job. And she said, can you give me any advice about the interview? And he said, yes, you will probably be interviewed by these 3 people, and this woman is the one that you want to please. You must listen to what she says with rapt attention. Hang on her every word, because she loves that. And that's exactly what the girl did. It was very useful advice, and she got the job. So there was that. recently I had a situation that turned out into a very unexpected example of this very thing. So there's a Launchpad member named Larry, and years ago he was part of Launchpad, his wife was part of Launchpad, and now he only calls me rarely, but he had a thorny unemployment compensation issue. So he called me 2 or 3 times about that. Can I qualify? What do I say? How do I fill out my form? And so we talked 2 or 3 times about that, and as it turns out, ultimately, the information that I had to give him was not very favorable. He was not going to be able to draw, I didn't think. And we're not really supposed to give out information like that, but we talked about it and ways around it and loopholes and all of that stuff. And then he said, you know, that's fine. I appreciate knowing. Just having the information is good. And he said, so tell me what you're doing. What's up with you? And so I told him a little bit, and I told him that Launchpad was in with this big a campaign to raise money. And he said, that is so good to know. He said, I have been thinking for years about how I can pay you back for all the help that Launchpad was for me and all the advice that you've given me over the years. And he says, and now I know how to pay you back. I have a very good friend who is an expert on fundraising. And she was with the, I can't remember, Heart Association or something like that for years and years and years, and she's retired. And we go have lunch every Sunday together. She's wonderful. I'm going to connect you with her, and I'll bet you any money that she would be happy to mentor you, to give you advice on how to create a big fundraising campaign. And so it's, you know, he brought it up. He brought it up, and John was absolutely right. What's going on with you? What are you into? How can I help you? And just get somebody talking and see if there's something that comes up that lets you know that you could help. And that's exactly what he did. So he's going to connect me with this woman. I don't know if she's going to want to help us, but it sounds like a wonderful resource. But it was just coming out of a conversation. And it's better if you just start talking and let them do the asking for you. So you don't have to do the ask. They're going to say, how about if I walk that resume over to the hiring manager? How about if I do this? You know, listen, I'd be happy to put in a good word on your behalf for so-and-so. So, you know, when you start small and you have sort of an attitude of helping, it tends to work out better. A lot of you know David Hewen, who does twice a year, does a series of free presentations at the Covenant Presbyterian Church for job seekers. And he says, in the past, he's always said, if you want to meet with me and talk to me about your situation, I'm happy to do that. You buy me a cup of coffee, I'll give you an hour. That's it. No more. And I can tell you exactly what he's going to say, but at any rate. But that's what he does. He says, I'm happy to meet with you. Bring me your questions, and I'll give you all the advice I can for an hour. That's it. So, you know, he's willing to help. Go in there prepared. Have a lot of questions prepared. Let me see if there's any other stories I wanted to tell you. His name is David Hewen, Hughen. He used to be the director of HR for Applied Materials. He has his own HR consulting firm now. But it's good if you know him through the Covenant Presbyterian things. He's going to be giving those. He gives them in October and in March or something like that. 6 weeks of free classes. So they'll be coming up pretty soon. But at any rate, if you know a hiring manager, never ask them to hire you. Never ask them to recommend you. Let them know that you're interested, and let them be the one that comes up with, here's what I'd be willing to do for you.